Hello there, friends and enemies. This week I thought I would make a simple little video talking just about the history of Yu-Gi-Oh! And how it correlates with the way that I play and the way that I've interacted with Yu-Gi-Oh! I thought this would be a fun idea, so I just wanted to go ahead and jump into it. I discovered Yu-Gi-Oh! Accidentally in 2003 when it came across my eyes on 4Kids TV on Saturday morning. I remember specifically that the first instance of Yu-Gi-Oh! I ever saw was the very middle of him playing Yami Yugi, playing Dungeon Dice Monsters with Duke Devlin. I almost immediately fell in love with the show, and the more that I watched, the more that I really wanted to get into the card game. And I had cards before. I had Pokemon cards when I was younger, but I didn't realize that cards could be games and that they could be tied to media. And so that was kind of a big thing for me when I was that age. When I got into Yu-Gi-Oh! The Yugi and Kaiba starter decks had already sold out and were out of print, but they were selling the Joey and Pegasus decks, which I got after begging my mom for months to get them. As with, I believe, a lot of people that got into Yu-Gi-Oh! When they were a kid, not only did I not know the rules to Yu-Gi-Oh!, but I didn't care to try and learn the rules, even when watching the show. Like, I didn't understand how the card game worked in context of the show. I sort of just, I played a version of Yu-Gi-Oh! Where it was like, monsters beat traps, traps beat spells, and spells don't do anything. Over the course of the next year, I would refine my idea of Yu-Gi-Oh! To get kind of a basic understanding of Yu-Gi-Oh!, but it was still playground Yu-Gi-Oh! At that time. I remember in 2004 when the first structure decks came out, my mom actually came home from work one night holding both of them in her hands and just gave them to me, which was a pretty cool memory. I was a really big fan of the Red Eyes deck. I really liked Red Eyes, but I didn't understand, as much as I liked the Vampire deck, I didn't understand vampires. At that point in time, the idea of playing with cards that hurt you in some way really just seemed like a stupid idea to me. So I didn't play with those cards. Tangentially to this, my mom also bought me the unofficial Beckett Yu-Gi-Oh! Collector magazines, which I loved reading through, and I loved getting them like bi-weekly. And in one of these magazines, they showcased the 2004 regional champion for North America, I believe. I could be wrong about that. But anyway, in whatever tournament that this kid won, he was running a vampire deck. And at that moment in time, I didn't really understand how vampires could be good, but I understood that obviously something about vampires that I wasn't getting made them good. At this point in time, I thought it would be cool to understand Yu-Gi-Oh! On such a level that I, a child at the age of 9, could go to tournaments and play competitively. So that was something that I didn't really aspire to, but I always thought would be cool in the back of my mind. About a year later is when the Yu-Gi-Oh! Create a Card contest, the first Create a Card contest happened, and I remember that having that in mind, that kid played vampires, I wanted to enter the contest and I wanted to make a card that would be so well designed in my 9-year-old mind that it would have to become a real card. I remember making this card and being so proud of it, being so proud that I made something that in my mind was such an adult decision to make a card that wasn't super powerful that other kids wouldn't make, that I thought for sure I was going to win. And ultimately what ended up happening is I gave the little printout picture to, I believe, either my grandma or my mom, and it ended up not getting sent off to the contest, so my submission didn't even get entered. Moving along to 2006 when Yu-Gi-Oh! GX came out, I was super excited because I didn't realize at that point in time that you could just add on to something that already exists. That was such a cool idea to me, so automatically I really liked GX. I really enjoyed Elemental Heroes out of the gate, and little did I know that GX would shape my idea of the game for years to come. The fun part about GX is whereas Duel Monsters was simply about, just making fun combinations, putting your favorite cards into a deck, which is what I did during that era, GX introduced the idea of having full structured archetypes. Archetypes had tiny beginnings in Duel Monsters, but they weren't really fully structured and thought out. GX was the first era where we were seeing this happen, and that was pretty cool to my child eyes. Very quickly, Cyrus became my favorite character, and Viacroids became my favorite archetype of all time, and to this day, they remain as my favorite archetype to ever have been thought up. I played a lot of Viacroids, I played a lot of Elemental Heroes, I played a ton of I didn't play Cyber Dragons, but I like to put Cyber Dragons into things. Same thing with Moki Moki. I thought Moki Moki was a fun little guy. I didn't really like the Ojamas, but they were there. As time went on, I didn't really pay attention to a whole lot of GX archetypes, but I was fully aware of them when they came out. I was aware of Alien and Volcanic and stuff like that. And then when the Crystal Beast came out, they solidified as my second favorite archetype of all time, and I played Crystal Beasts religiously. Moving on to the release of 5Ds, at this point in time, a couple things happened. First of all, of course, we had the introduction of Synchro Monsters to the game, which I immediately thought was cool. Having a new type of monster come into the game was such a mind blower for me. I played Synchro Monsters as much as I possibly could. Another thing that happened was that I gained a friend who I could consistently play Yu-Gi-Oh! With. Now, both of us were still kind of in a phase of Playground Yu-Gi-Oh!, so we didn't fully understand the rules. We understood them for the most part, but there were certain rules that we didn't really follow, and that would be remedied in the years to come, but for the most part, we were playing with 100, 120 card decks. We were, my friend was, drawing at the end of his turn. We were kind of weirdly thinking of the rules in our own heads rather than the way that the cards actually said that they worked. Over the years, we would play Yu-Gi-Oh! For hours and hours a day. Now, at this point in time, I had stopped watching the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime, and I was just focusing on the cards, whereas my friend was paying attention to the Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds anime. I enjoyed all of the dragons. I thought all of the dragons were cool. Most of the archetypes I wasn't really a fan of, but I enjoyed Stardust Dragon and any cards that kind of had to deal with that. I enjoyed Red Rose Dragon. I really just enjoyed the dragons, mainly. Fast forward a couple years to when Zeal and Xyz monsters come out, and at this point in time, Xyz monsters are another exciting new thing to do. I love Xyz monsters, so does my friend. We're playing with them all the time, and we start getting into a group of friends that also play Yu-Gi-Oh! And at this point in time, we are kind of forced to pay full attention to the actual official Yu-Gi-Oh! Rulebook because our friends are not going to sit there and handle our playground Yu-Gi-Oh! Bullshit. So at this point in time, I sort of started paying more attention to the rules and how they worked, but because I didn't really understand deck building and I was still kind of going for the put all of your favorite cards into a deck mentality that I had back when Duel Monsters was airing, I didn't really have a good grasp on the game as a whole. I very quickly started to realize that I was not as good at Yu-Gi-Oh! As I thought I was, as I was getting outclassed and beaten by every single person that I knew. Full disclosure, it was incredibly frustrating for me to go through that because it felt like no matter how much I thought I understood more and adjusted my deck, it just didn't work out. Fast forward to when Pendulum Monsters release, and the release of Pendulum Monsters was weird for me. When they were first announced, I didn't like them, and everyone that I knew thought they would be cool. As time went on, that sort of switched. I started to like them a whole lot, and everyone I knew started to dislike them, to the point where by the time that Pendulum Monsters premiered in the game, I was fully in love with them, and they had already been solidified as my favorite type of card of all time. Another thing that happened at this point in time is I had fully solidified in my mind that I just didn't understand how deck building in Yu-Gi-Oh! Worked. It was just too much for me to understand. However, at this point in time, I was also already starting to understand that archetypes were the way to go. I had started playing Medolce, friends of mine were playing Dragon Ruler, I really wanted to play Cleafort, stuff like that. So I understood the name of the game was in the archetypes, but I didn't really understand how to make archetypes work. Over the next few years, that friend group would dissipate, we would play Yu-Gi-Oh! Less and less, but it would still stay at the forefront of my mind as my favorite card game, and eventually I would learn to play Magic the Gathering. After about a year of playing pretty exclusively Magic the Gathering and not really playing Yu-Gi-Oh! All that much, I had solidified that I just understood Magic a little bit better. It was at this point in time that Link Monsters were released, and Link Monsters releasing was almost the death of Yu-Gi-Oh! For me. We just had Pendulum Monsters release, which was already a really confusing thing to get into, and I didn't like them because they were confusing, and then once I understood them, I thought, oh, they're pretty cool. But now we had Link Monsters coming out, which were not only confusing, but they also fundamentally changed the way that decks could be built and the way that the game would be played, at least in my mind. I decided I wasn't going to get into any new cards, especially if they involved Link Monsters. I was just going to ignore it and just play Yu-Gi-Oh! The way that I had been playing for the last 5-6 years. After about another year of being super into Magic and then slowly starting to decline my interest in Magic, I started thinking about how I wanted to understand Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck building. I looked up some videos on how to deck build in Yu-Gi-Oh! And how to play Yu-Gi-Oh! Just to refresh myself on how the rules really are supposed to work, and something clicked and I sort of understood at that point in time, oh, this is how Yu-Gi-Oh! Is supposed to be played. It was also really helpful that Duel Links came out sometime around the time that I got out of Yu-Gi-Oh! Probably a little bit earlier, so I was playing Duel Links a lot, and that was sort of helping me. Fast forward a couple years to 2020, I have not looked at a new Yu-Gi-Oh! Card in years, and I decide to just, you know, mess around, start looking around at stuff. You know, the pandemic is happening, I'm sort of just living in my life, and I see that two things either came out or have come out. Dragon Maids had come out, I think, the year prior, and we were about to get Earth's Archtypes. Now, both of these archetypes appealed to me in a specific way, and I decided I should get back into Yu-Gi-Oh! And not long after I decided that, they revealed that they were doing the new Master Rule, which took away all the stuff that I didn't like about Link Monsters. That next year, I just went crazy, getting Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards after Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards after Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards, and on top of that, we had Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s revealed and released, and Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s, I immediately fell in love with the concept of Rush Duel. Rush Duel was such a cool idea to me, and I was certain that we were going to get Rush Duel in the TCG. I was getting better and better and better at Yu-Gi-Oh! Understanding the game a little bit more, and starting to sort of take a look at the way that competitive players view the game so that I could understand the game on a better level, while also not really wanting to get into that competitive circuit. It has really helped me learn not only how to play, but also how to teach other people that might want to get into the game how to play the game. And taking a look back at when I started Yu-Gi-Oh! To now, it feels really interesting to see how I started just kind of tossing cards into a deck because I thought they looked cool or they sounded cool, to now where it's like, if I'm doing something like that, I'm making sure that the full deck works and that I'm just putting it in as a silly little tech piece. So there we go, there is my evolution with Yu-Gi-Oh! Sorry if this video was not what you expected, or if it was kind of boring. I just thought it'd be fun to talk about. I would go over all the decks that I played, but my memory is really bad. I don't really remember all of the decks that I played throughout all of the years. Most I can tell you is that I've been playing Madolche since I was like 16 years old. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found something to enjoy about this video. I know that I said I wanted to do a bi-weekly schedule to have videos that would be higher effort. This video was more of just a slow rolling introduction as I've been a little busy this week. Next video will be better done, a little bit more thought out and well done. I just thought this video would be fun to do. I've been thinking about doing it for about a year now, and I thought it'd be fun to put out there. Once again, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, as always, drink your water.